Chris Hilton is the Urban Partnership Director for the Nature Conservancy's Puget Sound program. Chris is responsible for directing new regional strategies to address stormwater pollution and expand the use of green infrastructure in Puget Sound, and she is establishing and nurturing City Habitats, which is a cross-sector coalition composed of organizations and individuals who are choosing to reimagine our human habitat as good for clean water and healthy communities. She also spent 5 years as the conservation director at the Whidbey-Camano Land Trust, and she's a conservationist who loves living in the city. And please welcome Chris.
All right. Thanks so much, John. It's so fun to be here with all of you this afternoon, and it was so great to hear all my co-presenters' talks. It's interesting that we all have such different perspectives, but we heard some common threads in there, so that's really exciting. So as John mentioned, I am from the Nature Conservancy, and what I'm going to talk about today is nearby nature. Many of my co-presenters talked about the co-benefits, or the many benefits that nature brings to our communities. So I'm going to dig into some of the science that's been done around what those benefits are. For decades, the Nature Conservancy has been working around the globe protecting the lands and waters on which all life depends. If you're familiar with our organization, you're probably thinking that you've heard of us working outside of cities, and that's been historically true. Here in Washington, over the past several decades, our work has really focused on protecting and restoring large-scale forest lands on the coast and Central Cascades, and reconnecting floodplain habitat for the benefit of salmon, birds, and wildlife. However, we are recognizing that people are moving to cities faster than ever. And a few years ago, it became very clear to us that in order to have a true impact on the Earth's natural systems and to meet the intent of our mission, we needed to work more actively in the places where nature and people come together, and that's in our cities and towns. So Puget Sound, as Michelle mentioned it's a place that we all love. And Puget Sound is not only a stunning backdrop for our life, it is truly an incredible place where land and water meet for diverse communities, economies, and an entrepreneurial spirit that draws people here. We are so lucky to have wonderful things like orcas off our downtown coastline, salmon continuing to return despite many struggles to our urban creeks, and native cultures that have fished our waters for thousands of years. But the region is also struggling with some really huge challenges. We as a region have not really kept up with the population growth and challenges that climate change are presenting to us. And with climate change coming faster and the population continuing to grow, those challenges are just getting larger. So as I mentioned, we're facing many environmental social challenges. Climate change, pollution, human health, and equity. These are challenges for cities all around the world right now. In particular, I really want to highlight the challenge of managing stormwater. The Northwest is really known for our rain. It is part of what makes our region so beautiful. But when it does rain here, that rainwater picks up garbage, dust from our brakes and our tires, oils from our cars, and particulate matter that's settled on the streets and washes it out, often into Puget Sound. Some of that then polluted stormwater goes to treatment facilities, but much of it just goes straight into storm drains and straight into Puget Sounds. And polluted stormwater runoff is the #1 source of pollution to Puget Sound. About 14 million pounds of pollutants end up in the Sound every year, and that's having a huge impact on salmon, wildlife, shorebirds, and our own human communities as well. The good news is that nature can play a transformational role in solving our urban challenges. There is over 40 years of peer-reviewed research that talks about the many benefits of nature and how it can solve some of those urban problems that I just described. These are a few examples of some of the nature-based solutions that the Nature Conservancy and our partners are working with. These aren't yet the norm, but they are gaining traction, and guided by strong science and engineering, these solutions are scalable and cost-effective. So I haven't talked about tree canopy very much yet, and I often use the term nearby nature, which absolutely includes tree canopy and our urban forests. And when I talk about nearby nature, I'm talking about any natural area you run into in your life. Nature in your neighborhood and in your community. What you pass on your commute to work, on your walks in the morning and the afternoon, where you go to school, any nature that you run into in your daily life in your city or town. So I am going to dig into some science, as I mentioned. So I hope you'll bear with me as I throw out some statistics that I find really interesting about how nature impacts us as humans. One study has found that residents living around green space are 3 times more likely to be physically active than those that don't. A study out of Portland found that tree-lined streets add nearly $9,000 to a home's selling price. And one study in a California community found that 90% of property crimes occur in areas without vegetation. Now, I know I'm speaking to the choir a little bit here, and you're all here because you enjoy nature and recognize that it provides value to your daily life. So I hope you'll find some value in some of these statistics nonetheless. Nature also acts as a filter, cleaning that polluted runoff that I spoke about just a moment ago. Street-side rain gardens, like this one here, are a great tool for slowing down polluted stormwater that I was discussing, and the wonderful gift that these plants and soils give us is they're able to pull out and filter many of those pollutants that the stormwater picks up. Rain gardens and trees in our communities filter the water, provide clean air, but they also increase safety in other ways. I mentioned vegetation related to crime statistics, but vegetation and greenery along streets also improves traffic safety, making walking considerably more safe for pedestrians and improving driver safety as well. Nature also connects us as humans, and we are learning, and more science is supporting, that our environment has a profound effect in how we engage with one another. We know that people who have strong relationships with others in their community live longer and are less likely to become ill. And we know that youth who are involved in relationships across generations are less likely to fall into criminal behavior. And nature provides a setting where these relationships can flourish. Neighborhood green spaces draw people to them, and in these spaces that are frequently visited, you see neighborhood ties grow stronger and relationships form across generations. This is a photo of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and this green you see in the background is actually part of the stormwater treatment facility at that building over down in Seattle. And what's wonderful about this, and what I think is most compelling about some of the research that's coming out now, is that we are finding that we don't need to drive out of the city to find large expanses of nature to benefit ourselves and provide wonderful habitat. More and more science is revealing that even really relatively small amounts of nature, street trees, which we've heard about today, trees in our neighborhood and small parks, offer incredible benefits for habitat, human health, and community health. So as a number of my co-presenters have mentioned today, our landscape is changing really rapidly. The world population is growing and moving to cities. It's anticipated that 1.7 million more people will live in the Puget Sound region by 2040. And according to the Brookings Institute, 50% of our landscape is going to be redeveloped over the next 40 years. So when I think about that, what I hear is that if we looked ahead to 2050, 50% of our city doesn't exist yet. And that presents an incredible opportunity to re-envision our cities and towns and our urban areas and how we interact with them. And this is going to take a massive amount of investment and intention to design and imagine our cities in ways that provide these benefits to wildlife and our human communities. It'll take the work Mark described of many agencies, nonprofit partners, and businesses coming together. And it'll take the work Sean was talking about as well as a critical component to ensure that the work we're doing benefits all of the residents in our community, includes all opinions, and brings us all together to formulate a strategy and a vision for our communities that we all can look forward to. So as we think about ways that we can use nature to work for us and improve our communities, I want to provide just a few specific examples where that's happening right now. I often come back to managing stormwater as one of my favorite topics in the area where I'm doing a lot of work. And I want to talk about a stormwater management project done by our friends at the City of Seattle, often referred to as the Swale on Yale. This is in the South Lake Union neighborhood. So as one of the densest neighborhoods in Seattle, the neighborhood of North Capitol Hill had some of the most polluted stormwater runoff. When it rained, all the gunk picked up on the street from that neighborhood would run untreated into a pipe through the South Lake Union neighborhood and get dumped straight into Lake Union. Now, of course, Lake Union is an important stopover for salmon in the watershed, and research shows that there is a critical link between stormwater pollution and salmon mortality prior to their ability to spawn or lay their eggs. So several years ago, Vulcan, a local real estate developer in the city of Seattle, came together and saw this opportunity to treat stormwater. And what they did was build these swales. They are 2 blocks long at the moment. They currently have 2 more blocks under construction now. And they essentially daylighted the stormwater pipe. The water flows through these beautiful swales, and all these super functional soils and plants clean that water. The water, then clean, goes back into the pipe and heads out into Lake Union. And what is amazing about this is it's made North Capitol Hill essentially a stormwater neutral neighborhood, but most people in Capitol Hill don't know that. It hasn't really impacted them, but it has dramatically improved stormwater going into Lake Union and provide this beautiful benefit to the South Lake community where folks walking or biking through have an opportunity to experience nature and experience some of the benefits that we're talking about here. I also wanted to mention some of the specific benefits to children and elders in terms of human health. As we all know, kids today are connected. Networks, screens, and apps have them connected to opportunities all over the world, but they're also missing on that vital connection between bugs, leaves, and the outdoor world that most of us were able to experience as kids. And nature has a great opportunity to support balancing out what is typically called nature deficit disorder for children. A couple of statistics again. A study of 250 school-age children in Cincinnati found that time spent playing outdoors significantly correlates to direct measures of physical health. Nature also provides educational benefits, having documented positive effects on attention capacity, impulse control, and cognitive development. And again, children don't need wild nature to reap the benefits. Even those small pockets of nature in our urban areas are hugely beneficial. Nature in our community also supports our aging population. We know that social connections and physical activity are essential as we age, and having increased amount of nature in our cities really supports both of those things. Access to nearby nature helps the elderly remain active, and it has a positive influence on those social connections that I was talking about earlier. However, because elders typically have reduced mobility, that accessibility is important. So that puts a fine point on the fact that it's important to have lots of different types of nature found throughout our cities and towns. One final specific example. This is the University of Massachusetts General Hospital's brain surgery recovery facility. And what happens in this particular room is once a patient has brain surgery, their bed faces the nurse's station for the first 24 hours. And after that 24-hour period, it flips. So they can look out on this balcony with a lovely garden. And this is based on some really groundbreaking research done in the 80s that identified that patients experience much faster recovery, much shorter hospital stays, and require much less pain medication when recovering from surgery. And the University of Massachusetts has acknowledged that this is a really important investment for them because it not only improves the patient experience, but it frankly improves their bottom line, and they are more efficient as a health institution with opportunities like this for their patients to experience nature. And finally, it won't surprise any of you that nature provides calm and improves our mental health. Our cities have been built as innovation centers, but that can also be incredibly distressing. And research shows that we are happier, have significantly greater well-being, and significantly less mental distress when we take advantage of nature in our cities. And that, of course, requires nature, our parks, our lovely tree canopy to exist and be healthy. So as I wrap up, I want to acknowledge my friends at the University of Washington and the Pacific Northwest Research Station at the Forest Service, particularly Dr. Kathy Wolf, who has done a lot of the research around nearby nature and supported the work we've been doing to gather that research together. If something in what I spoke about really interested you and you want to dig deeper, my colleagues out in the lobby have a wonderful report we put together with Dr. Wolf called Outside Our Doors that is a great summary of all of the peer-reviewed literature that covers the benefits of nearby nature to human well-being and thriving communities. So I just really want to thank you all for your time today. I know you've been listening to us talk for a while now, and I look forward to engaging with you further through the rest of the afternoon. Thank you.